the thing about depression is, and I want to stress this so much, is that we're taking a journey with it, and it's a matter of exploration. And when you choose that perspective, then you see it as grist for the mill and you're awakening. You can say depression is leading me somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I trust. And I place such a big emphasis on trust. I trust that it's leading me to some outcome greater and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined.
Welcome to Far with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I am delighted to be joined by Kyle Nicolaides. Nicolaides, right? Yes.
Nicolaides, yeah.
Nicolaides. It's
Yeah.
close. It's
It's
very
okay.
Greek.
I get confused sometimes.
Tell me about it. Let me tell you about Kyle and what he's been up to. At just 19 years old, Kyle signed a record deal with his band Beware of Darkness, right? They were very successful. They toured with bands like Smashing Pumpkins and had a top 5 rock hit. They played on late night talk show circuits and in front of big audiences. And his music was streamed 35 million times. 10 years of living the dream and rock star life. And Kyle started to feel things fall apart. His band broke up and he found himself in a very serious battle with depression. And as he describes it, this band breaking up accidentally crashed headfirst into a blistering spiritual journey with plant medicine, meditation, and tantra. And this not only healed his depression in a profound way, but it also gave meaning to all the time that he spent suffering. And it led to the authorship of a new book that he wrote called Thank God for Depression, which is what I'm very excited to talk to him about. And this book chronicles everything he learned in his decade-long struggle. Kyle, thank you so much for beaming in, brother. This is awesome. I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Dude, so I love the way you describe what happened when your band broke up and how it led into an accidental or cosmic crash headfirst into a blistering spiritual journey, man.
Whoops.
I feel like that's as far as I know, was one of the surest ways out of depression. I have a little bit of experience with that, but I want to hear yours. And so, dude, 10 years is a long time, and you were riding a wave of success and living a life, right? Living the dream. So what happened, my friend? How did you go from, just living what every person who plays in a band, dreams about to, when did you realize things were not what they should be?
It's a great question. So writing the book actually helped me sort out the timeline of like everything of what happened. But basically I was, 17, 18 and already massively depressed. Like I was 18, I felt like I was 95. I was like ready to be done. I was like, life has nothing to offer. And it was really interesting. And I remember thinking like, oh, well, maybe if my rock band gets famous, maybe if I get a record deal, like maybe if I get money or fame or success, like I'll feel better and like it'll fill that void. So we got famous pretty quick. Like it was 6 months and like our song was on the radio, we were touring. And I think I kept a journal the whole time and I was looking back on it, and it was a tour journal, and it went from like Texas, like never been more depressed.
Oh, man.
Louisiana, want to die. And then it was like London, like not having fun. And I think it's the classic story of like trying to fix yourself in ways that won't fix yourself. So my whole thing was, I had no tools for depression. I didn't know what depression was. No one in my family talked about depression or anxiety. So when it hit, I had no idea what was going on. And as a man, I also had so much shame around what's wrong with me. I'm broken. I shouldn't feel like this. And it was a really interesting head twist too, because I remember, being like, what happened? Like we got on TV, we have a radio song, like I just got paid money. Like I still feel like I want to die, and I don't feel, I think the worst part was I didn't feel worthy of all of it, and I couldn't celebrate it or enjoy it. So it taught me a lot of big lessons. And um when the band fell apart, I had my whole identity placed in the band.
Mm,
And I talk about this a lot in the book, because I think the thing about my book is I look at depression from a lot of different lenses. So I look at it from like a spiritual lens, an issue of identity, an issue of consciousness, issue of presence, like all these things. And I tied into a lot of rock band stories. So when my band broke up, I had no idea who I was. I had no idea. I had no sense of self-worth, no sense of
mm,
confidence, and that led to a spiritual path, which led to um plant medicine and healing with depression. So
amazing.
um
Man, I have, it's, I can relate in a lot, I spent 20 years, 22 years of my life very much convinced of this identity that I was an actor. And I wasn't the happiest of actors for a lot of reasons, and I thought, well, once I become very successful, and fame, whatever comes with it, then everything will be easier. But my whole identity was wrapped up in this career that I had chosen, of expression, and meanwhile, at the time, I was very much locked out of fully expressing myself, because I had so much trauma, and I wasn't truly aware, of where that trauma lived, where it came from, how to express it. I had a lot of physiological conditioning from being a man and being in a family that was not exactly functional, along with some abuse. It all leaves its mark. And so I understand, when your identity is mixed up, and you know and we don't realize it at the time, but it's egoic, it's very three-dimensional and dense, and it's very um personality related. It's these aspects that we confuse for ourselves, and they're not, right? So,
mhm.
but what's incredible to me is, even before it was, it seems like it started out on a low for you, and then even as things picked up, you were like, it never quite rung your bell. I mean, I'm sure it had its moments, and I'm sure you found moments, on the road and all that, but that's that's pretty unique. From, like, I know some people realize after, the wheels are falling off, that this is not the best for them, but you had a sense of it from the beginning, and you were never really happy or satisfied right from the word go, right?
Yeah,
I wonder where that
yeah,
comes from, brother. I wonder if that is ancestral, if that's just, I mean, have you contemplated where the origin of that comes from?
yeah. I got a Vedic astrology reading a couple months ago, and there's something, I don't know if it's a planet, but there's something called K2, and it's basically like the never enoughness, the critic, the harshness.
Hmm.
um yeah,
So you have
but I mean,
ancestors that were born on K2. You're a
I
direct
don't know.
descendant of that fucking never enough place.
I don't know. I know. And she's great. And she's like, you'll have that for 20 years. And I was like, what?
You're like, no, wait, don't believe her.
Yeah.
Don't.
But I mean, you have a good point about the identity thing too, because like I have a saying where it's like, if you can't give $5 right now when you're broke, like you're not going to give $50,000 when you have $1 million.
Mhm.
And I think the mistake that, I don't want to call it a mistake, but I think um trying to fix yourself in ways that are not going to work. Um, and another mistake I made was putting my entire identity in something external, which is
Mm.
kind of what you just touched upon. And when I did that, it was a roller coaster, and it was hellacious, because if I wrote a song that was good, I'm like, oh, I'm finally worthy of like being on this
Mm.
planet. But like, and if we got a tour, I was like, wow, like my life matters. And if our song got on the radio, I was like, wow, I'm a big deal. But then on the other hand, if I didn't write a song that day, or if I wrote half a song, I'd be like, oh, you don't deserve love, you don't deserve food, like just really extreme thinking. Or you know, if we got passed on for a tour, I'd be like, no one likes my band. Like, so it's a first, it's the best way to suffer when you do that, you know, because you're just complete, like your self-worth, your self-esteem is completely reliant on external things. And it's a bumpy path.
It is, man. It's
you know,
we and I feel like artists, you know, fall into this path very quickly, and then, you know, it becomes this never-ending pitfall for us. I was the same way, man. I mean, if I was in a play, oh my God, if I was in a play, I was in heaven, you know, doing that every night. If I was, you know, shooting a TV show or making a movie, everything, you know, was mission control oriented. I felt very secure in myself, and I didn't have those bouts with self-loathing that I did when I wasn't, you know. But the thing about our business is, you know, you find yourself either beating yourself up for not creating your own or waiting for that call. And either way, it's all, you know, it's still, you're still looking for the same external validation. It's a recipe for depression. It is such a recipe for suffering.
yeah,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah. And something interesting too is that I remember doing a podcast a couple years ago after the band broke up, and I had no idea what was happening. And this guy asked this question where he's like, you played Conan, you did this, you did this. He's like, do you wake up and feel successful? And like, do you wake up and you're like, I made it, I did it? And the question wrecked me, because I was like, I never once felt successful doing any of those things. And it was really interesting, because I think part of the spiritual journey and part of the plant medicine path was a complete shift in identity, from Kyle to like the small ego to like the infinite nature of spirit or source. And I was at a flea market like a year ago, and I bought my ex-girlfriend a sound bowl. And I remember I sat down like on her bed and started playing the sound bowl alone. And it hit me so hard. This just like, oh, this is how the universe is created. Like, this is like alpha, omega, something. And it was wild, because I was playing it and I was like, this feels like success. Like, this feels like the most success I've ever had. Like, just having this little moment to myself and like treasuring it and enjoying it and realizing the magnitude of that. So I think it's also, it's so interesting, because it's an entire head game.
Yeah.
You know, of like, we get to choose our own adventure, make meaning out of what we want to make meaning out of. And depending on how we do that, or, you know.
Yeah. But it's that's what people, you know, you decide what signs mean. You know, I mean, even in the most extreme circumstances, it is up to the beholder to decide what something means for them. You know, when somebody says something to you, you can give or take it and assign it the energy and power that you want. You know, that woman told you then that you something about planet K2, you know what I mean, like that. But don't take that to heart, because that, you know, she's intuiting something. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, or it doesn't necessarily, you know, 20 years people put so much stock into what other people say. They end up making it true about themselves. You know, 20 years you're going to be like this, dude. You may not be like this tomorrow. You know, nobody knows but you, and you have the power to decide. Exactly. You know, I try to encourage people to remember that when they're visiting a doctor or, you know, a psychic. I'm like, don't you create your own prophecies. We all do. You know, there's an infinite number of paths to take. I never would have imagined 5 years ago that I would be sitting here doing this and enjoying this as much as I am, and feeling like I'm actually doing something that matters, instead of hoping to do something that matters. You know, when you're an actor, you're doing a play, you hope to get a part in a play that means something for people who see it, but it's not always what's happening. You know, I've been in some plays in New York City that, you know, I mean, if they were never written, the world would have, you know, not known it. They wouldn't have missed anything. Some of my friends who came and saw this place are shaking their head right now if they're listening.
That's funny.
Because they were there was no point to them. But so but it becomes a slippery slope, you know. So you I loved your experience with the sound bowl. I had similar experiences with meditation and with plant ceremony, coming to these same kind of feelings and realizations, that you described when you were listening to that sound bowl. So that's fascinating to hear, and you talk about all the hours you spent mastering depression and writing the book so that other people, can learn that depression can be a gift, just like pain and trauma can be the greatest, most powerful energy to alchemize, right? And you mentioned that in your book about alchemizing depression. I know I've alchemized trauma into my greatest gift, hands down, 125%. That is the story of my life, and it seems to me that's what you're doing with depression. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was really well said. So, and actually, what you were speaking on before was like a perfect transition to what like the first couple of chapters are about perspective and the freedom to choose how you perceive things and how you make meaning out of things. But the alchemy, so one of the stories in the books, and I start the book out with this, where I start with the morning after the first time I did ayahuasca. And the theme that ran alongside my depression, which I didn't realize, was spiritual yearning. So since I was like a teenager, I wanted nothing more to feel like some connection with something bigger than myself, something divine, something eternal. And I didn't get it. Like I went to holy places, I read the spiritual books, I prayed, and I was met with silence. And every time I was met with silence, the depression roared back and said, see, you're meaningless, you're alone, you don't matter, like your life is a mistake, and then I got caught in this worldly play of rock band and touring and identity with that. So what happened was I did ayahuasca, and in 2 nights, it both wiped out 10 years of depression, and it's so hard to put words to it, but I got the answer I was wanting about spirituality and connection and divine. And I got this message that was basically like, God, spirit, Ma has been here walking with me the whole time. I was like spiritually ignorant of it. So it was this huge awakening, like some Matrix, taking the pill or whatever.
Yeah,
So
the red pill.
yeah, the red pill. So, and the thing that was more interesting to me was that it forced me to change my relationship with depression, because I thought depression was a terrorist. I thought it was the worst thing to happen to me, and I never thought I would come out of it. Like I was so far gone and so lost that I was like, I'm just a depressed person on earth. Like if you would have asked me what my ethnicity was, I just would have said depression. So when that happened, it changed everything, because I realized that, if depression led to the spiritual awakening, if depression led me home, then how could it ever be a bad thing? And then I started doing I started journaling about it and asking about it, and realized that, not everybody has to go do ayahuasca to heal depression, but I think a really big question to ask yourself is, what is the relationship you have with depression? And you could say, what is the relationship you have with anxiety? What is the relationship you have with OCD? Because it goes back to acceptance and resistance, where if you think your depression's a terrorist, then you're going to be afraid of it. You're going to think it's the worst thing that ever happened to you. And all that's going to lead to is just more terror and more suffering, versus if you create a little bit of space and spaciousness and ask and say like, oh, well, what if my depression's a teacher? What if my depression is leading me somewhere? What if there's consciousness behind my depression? And then, going back to the alchemy point, like you zoom the camera out even more, and you say, okay, like what if my soul chose this body, chose my family, chose all the life circumstances as curriculum, chose depression as curriculum? Like this is something for me to overcome and learn from. And when you do that, it changes the entire perspective on your life path, your choices, your decisions, and your struggle. Because then you start to see it as, okay, maybe depression's an ally, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a teacher. instead of just getting your teeth kicked in and your knees bashed in by it at all times. So
Yeah.
that's my big point, and that's the alchemy there.
You've just described to me the rites of passage of a wizard, my friend. You have come
That's funny as
into
hell.
wizardry, because
Uh,
what you have done, in a relatively short time from the time that you had this awakening, and began to put things together. In my opinion, in my beliefs, and I was raised with a whole different set of beliefs as a Catholic, and the shame and the guilt, but my current beliefs are that that's why we're here. Like literally, that's why we're here, because we all come with trauma, whether it be from this life, the last, or our grandparents, and they're starting to be able to really see that in the DNA. So the science is really backing up what's been being said in metaphysical circles, what's been understood and intuited in metaphysical circles for the longest time, and science is finally playing catch up, and really looking at DNA of people through generations and saying, oh, holy shit, this person's family was in the potato blight or whatever in Ireland and the 1600s. Look, there's that gene that's all screwed up. You know what I mean? That's that kind of trauma. But what you said is I think you've grasped the meaning of it all, my friend. It's amazing to hear the understanding that you've come into. Just incredible. And it's fascinating to me that you had to sit with mother, to finally hear the message. But you couldn't have got there, like you said, if it wasn't for this state that you were in and that you were battling in, right? And it rearranged your perspective about it. So you're no longer a victim of depression. And that's, I think a lot of people begin their healing path, but they always want to leave a toe in that victimhood mentality, whether it's trauma, whether, I see it and I understand it. It's safer because that's part of your identity. And I think there's a fear that goes with separating from it. I mean, even people who are almost healed, but they haven't forgiven those who, those people who they feel caused them, that they have not alchemized it yet, right? Like I have nothing but love for the people who I would have once said are responsible for, my suffering, because there was a lot of abuse and that's scarring, and causes problems. But if that hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I'd be, God knows what I'd be doing. But so I'm grateful for it, right? And I have the same sense that that's why I came. That's why I had the family I did. It's all an opportunity to evolve, and why else would we come? So that's incredible. So what tradition did you do? Was it a Shipibo tradition, the plant ceremony you attended?
No, it was private in NorCal.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I just was wondering if it was around a fire or if it was in the dark.
it was in the dark. It
Oh, okay, it
was
wasn't in the dark. So it was probably
yeah.
it was probably more along the Shipibo traditional.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their lineage is, but it was just
If it
nighttime.
was in the dark, that's usually Shipibo. So that's
Okay.
that's what I thought. I would have been surprised if you said it was around the fire, and
Yeah.
because that's a different kind of ceremony. The one in the dark is deliberate. It's so that you can go within, and find the answers you're looking for. So cool. So we'll get into your rock star days in a bit. I won't follow my temptation to jump right into some of those adventures you had, but
I mean, you can ask whatever you want. I know it's just a lot of wacky
no, it's
stories.
great. So you did. I mean, I've sat in ceremony, half a dozen times, I think, over half a dozen weekends, and it's a remarkable experience. It's a remarkable opportunity. And some people truly, I feel like it's no accident they end up there. And other people, I think, don't understand how to set an intention, and how, there's the interaction with the medicine, and it all has to be kind of lined up for the person. But when it is lined up, I mean, it's the 4th of July fireworks display, in any part in America can't even, it's like a candle to the sun compared to what you go through when it is aligned. That's what's waiting for people who do feel called and do go with the right intention, right? Because you set an intention before you went.
Yeah, every time.
Every time, right?
But
yeah.
I mean, usually my intention is usually just, or it was when I first started out, where I was like, the medicine knows what I need more than I need,
Mhm.
more than I know. And it's actually funny because this is, I say this in the book about depression in life too, where I trust that the medicine knows what I need more than I need, or sorry, more than I know. I said that wrong twice. More than I know, and it's leading me somewhere that is so beautiful I could never imagine.
Yeah.
So it's a prayer for me to like get out of the way. And
Yeah. And no, it does. Yeah. And you have to trust it, and go along for the ride. And just know that what's on the other side, because a lot of people, they're curious about ayahuasca, but there's a lot of fear involved,
it's terrifying. It's
yeah,
the most terrifying thing in the
dude.
it is the most terrifying thing in the whole world. It's the biggest example of taking your hands off the steering wheel. I mean, it's all a death rehearsal,
it's
because you have
crazy,
no
man.
idea what the hell's going to happen. Also, like I tell people, it's like, if you're struggling with something, people are scared of like, oh, I have to face that. And I'm like, it's like paying credit card debt up front,
Yeah.
because I'm like, your life is you're already suffering and you're
Yeah.
just not dealing with it. But you could go in and spend 2 nights and, have it be really, I've had some terrible nights on ayahuasca, just
Yeah.
brutal, and,
Yeah.
but it was worth it because now she can, in my experience, I've seen people be confronted by their greatest fears. I've been confronted by my greatest fear,
Mm.
and it helps you live life better,
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
I think that the medicine works in a couple different ways, where it's like, for me, it just wiped out the depression like that. And it's kind of what you were saying, like there's like a miracle thing where it's gone,
Mhm.
but like for me, anxiety, it's been a dog fight. Like
Yeah.
every time I think anxiety gets wiped out, it's like, nope. And I have to keep going back or doing other things,
Yeah.
and then some people try the medicine, it doesn't work, so it's not a one
No,
fixed
it's
answer,
not.
and the other thing with medicine too is that like it shows you a lot. So for example, like it showed me my true nature was infinite and eternal, and so is everyone's.
Mhm.
So then you're given that nugget, and then you go back to life and you're standing in line at Trader Joe's and you're triggered by everybody because everyone's in your way or bumping into you, and the work is, well, how do I integrate that? It's
Yeah.
like, how do I see everybody as spirit? So it's all the shamans like that would say, like, okay, once you leave, like now the ceremony starts,
Yeah.
and I think that's the tricky part with medicine, is that you really need to have good integration practices and it's know how to integrate it and what to do with it, and then because ultimately it's like you're giving information and you're like, okay, how do I turn that into a way of being?
That's right. How do I get it from knowledge to wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
the wise man walks around with that, and the person with
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, great. Maybe you can ask him a question. He might, as a reference, but he's not. It's there's a difference,
Mm-hmm.
and so what I found is, and I've made meditation part of my daily life, and that's so anxiety, and that, as an artist, I'm sure you've dealt with the, I don't know what they call it, the inner critic,
Oh,
that
brutal.
voice that we adopted from somewhere that is just so relentlessly cruel. It can be, and one of the biggest, I think, it's like that the ever flame that won't go out, that won't stop letting you beat up on yourself no matter what's going on or how good you
Mm-hmm.
do. um I had one of those, real bad. And I had developed all kinds of habits, to shut that voice up. And none of them were good. None of them were good habits to have. And I hated myself more for the habits, right? So it was a cycle.
Yeah.
It's like any addict is dealing with this on some level.
Mhm.
And I was there, but meditation, along with plant ceremony, and it all helped to come, as a combination to help quiet that voice. And now, once in a while I'll catch myself, like I caught myself saying, I'm such a disappointment to my dogs the other day, because I
Oh,
know they wanted to go out. I could see in their faces they wanted to go out.
yeah.
And I was running around, and they just looked at me like, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And I was tired and I wasn't thinking, and I let my inner monologue slip out, and I said, I'm such a disappointment. And my wife caught me, and she said, don't sing that to yourself,
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that I was, even though I was talking to the dogs. You see how it's,
Mhm.
you think that the work is never done. It's not,
Yeah.
it's never done.
Oh, I know. Believe me, I know. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, yeah, it's you're absolutely right. And it's interesting because like meditation will give you the space and the consciousness to witness that. And then I think plant medicine is good for um finding the root of it. Because I remember when I made the decision to do plant medicine for the first time, I was on antidepressants and no
Oh,
one
okay.
told me you had to get off that.
Oh boy, yeah.
And I freaked out because I was 10 years of depression, finally got on antidepressants, got over the shame and like the stories behind that. Was on antidepressants for 6 months, best 6 months of my life. I had to I felt like I was born again, and I had to like look at everything in my life, and I was like, oh, this is what it's like to not be depressed. Like this is how normal people do things. So I get off. So medicine ceremony comes up, and no one told me how to get off it, and I freaked out, and I was like,
Wow.
fuck these hippies, fuck everybody. Like, I'm not doing this. And my friend was like, talk to the shaman, talk to the shaman. So I talked to the shaman, and he said something wise where he's like, medicine will help you get to the root of the depression,
Yeah.
and antidepressants help the symptoms, which, it was true in my case. It's not true in everyone's case, but I think the magic of medicine is that it can show you things that no amount of talk therapy can get to, like no
That's
amount of
right.
like meditate, like, so I like the whole spiritual download for me of like my depression being based in spiritual ignorance and feeling a disconnect from the divine.
Hmm.
Never would have guessed that in a million years. So, and then like she was just like this, and I think like that's the incredible part about it is like I've been to enough ceremonies now where you look at 20 people on the ground, and the consciousness and intelligence of this medicine is so mega that she's working
Mm,
with every single person in a different way, working exactly what, like giving them exactly what they need,
yeah.
you know so
Yeah, it's remarkable. And
it's
you're
nuts.
you're
It is
shown,
so nuts.
you
I
know,
don't
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some nights where you're shown less
of course.
than other nights, but some nights is it's like, I don't know how to describe it other than you'll be shown something over and over and over. I remember in the last ceremony, I kept seeing this interaction I had with my son, who was, I think, 8 at the time. We were just playing catch, and I was being so impatient with him. And I
Mhm.
and I was given a front row seat to this whole every second that this went down, it was just showing it over and over. And I'm watching myself, and I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, he's just trying
Mhm.
to play catch. And I'm the personification of my father. I don't know what I had going on that day, but it was heartbreaking to watch.
Wow.
It was heartbreaking. And I finally was like, all right, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. I'm going to hold on to it. I'm not going to go back into, I'm going to try to take it with me, in my life, in my interaction, because, the last thing you want your kids to feel is like you don't have time for them to
Mhm.
learn, right? Because playing catch
Mhm.
was something that he was just learning to do. But man, it's like you're shown, you
Mhm.
can be shown a lot of things. That's just like an example off the top of my head, but a
Yeah.
very simple example. But it's
Yeah.
amazing. The medicine
It's,
shows you what
yeah.
you need to see.
And I think a nightcap to this is that all of it's out of love.
Mhm.
Like all of it is out of, it's because she loves us and she wants us the best for us. So even if she shows something terrifying, it's still out of love.
Yeah,
You know, even if you show something very confronting or very, very challenging, it's there's love behind it.
yeah,
So
and healing
yeah.
and opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, my
It's magical. Its life is so mystical. Like it is insane. It
it
just
is
keeps getting
in,
more bonkers.
it is incredible. I had a close my best friend who, as of late, he last few years we've gone together every year together, and he was sharing his experience, and he talked about the previous day. He's was in a rocky time with his wife, and there's been some domestic violence, and um you know, but he saw this moment where there was an interaction where he was behind a locked door with his kid, and she was trying to break down the door, and he got scared because she got really violent, and he called the cops, as she has done to him. And he was shown this moment over and over, and he was like, and then I saw what I could have done, which was open the door and give her a hug, you know.
Mhm.
and you know, he's telling a story, and of course I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe he's going to share this. And everybody, man, heard this story that he shared, you know, when we were the morning after, when we were integrating, and everyone was just like, you know, what, you can't hear that story and not think there's always an opportunity that is a different path there, that leads to, you know, a resolution that is more in line with love than we think. We, you know what I mean? We get boxed in, especially when we're triggered into a fight or flight. But
Yeah.
what I mean, what a lesson for him to see. And then and then he had the courage to share it, and everyone
Wow.
was like, holy shit, you know,
It's
everyone was
beautiful.
moved by it. The lessons, you know, it's lessons you just can't get, and you would never get, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
that kind of an interaction leaves people with scorn and spite and anger and regret. You don't walk away and be like, you know what I could have done. You know what I
Yeah.
should, you know what I mean? You just don't. You're like,
No, I
F
mean,
that, you know. Oh
yeah.
man.
It's
It's
the ability to reframe, like to reframe trauma and reframe events, because that actually happened to me the second time I sat. I had because of depression, I had so much shame about being a musician that I didn't tell anyone what I did for like 2 or 3 years. And I
mm,
know it probably sounds ridiculous, but you know, I had a lot of anger for people we worked with, like bandmates and tour managers and managers, because like I had a really real bumpy time with a lot of characters. And the second night on medicine, like I went on every tour I've been on in one night. Like she took me back on tour, took me to hotel rooms, took me with everyone we worked with, and she was basically just like, oh, you know why this person was a dick to you? Because like they weren't loved, or like they're doing the best they
mm,
can with this. And it was like, this bandmate, like you don't hate him, you actually feel so much love for him because you feel helpless because you can't help him. Like that's what that's about. And that's the power of it too, is like the medicine can just completely change how you see your memories, see how you change how you see the events in your life and what happened to you, and rewrite it in a way that sets you free from that, and you're not holding on to it with as much anger or resentment. And I think that's been like a lot of the power in it.
mhm.
um yeah.
That's how you heal. I mean, people don't think that the past can be changed.
Hmm.
And I say to them, that is not true at all. The past can be changed, because time is not what we think it is. That's just how we experience it. But you are changing the past. When you change your perspective about what happened, you have changed your past in a quite a literal way,
Hmm.
because you're no longer the person you were when it happened the other way. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
profound. It's confusing, I think, because we're in a human body, and that's not how we're programmed to perceive time. But you can start to kind of get a sense of how time is not this linear thing. You know, it's
No.
really much deeper than that.
Yeah, and then I have a lot of close friends um who are experiencing this firsthand right now, and I've had different had different teachers and different lineages talk about it, of the idea of when you heal yourself and you heal your karma, it's both healing the future generations and the past generations. And I think that's also very profound too.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And I was introduced to this concept through Dr. Joe Dispenza, who was, he really was the person who taught me to meditate. I had tried to meditate, meeting with very little success before I attended a workshop with him and listened to him teach his techniques, which of course are far older than him, but he has brought this his understanding of them to these meditations, and a lot of them discuss and talk about how you understand that there's a future you who waiting for you with open arms, open heart, and nothing but love. As much as you may feel like that's impossible, and when you start to do these things out of self-love, you're doing it to the younger version of yourself. And he describes, this dude has the most intense he spends so much time in meditation. He goes quantum, man. And he's just like,
yeah.
the stories he tells you're like, you just can't make these things up. They're just too strange,
Mhm.
So that it's an amazing concept, and I agree. I think there's something to it, there's definitely something to it. It's a powerful thing. We are human beings.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic everywhere, and we have no idea what the hell's going on.
That's right. No,
Yeah.
you hit it.
Yeah.
So you had this incredible realization, and so I was on your website, and you have everybody who's listening this far, if anybody who is actively struggling, I feel like a lot of people are struggling to some degree, but others are struggling more to the degree that you were, Kyle. So you've turned your website into kind of a one-stop shop, like for people who, okay, there's some very practical things right on your website where people can help begin to habitually change their state, in a way that will get them out of the worst of it. And I think that's so awesome what you did. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the practices you've come into, and what you've learned since you wrote your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually working. So basically what the book is it's a smorgasbord. It's a smorgasbord of 10 years of experience of everything I learned in depression, everything that offered relief. And that's everything from self-care to what do you do with your thoughts, to different types of meditation, to looking at what I call the manageables in your life. So like looking at like living situation, job, money, relationship, like what are you content with, what are you not content with? And it's basically like a whack-a-mole with depression, and like let's put everything on the table and just like look at everything and see, maybe this will work, maybe this will work, maybe this won't work. Because the thing about depression is, and I want to stress this so much, is that we're taking a journey with it, and it's a matter of exploration. And when you choose that perspective, then you see it as grist for the mill and you're awakening. You can say depression is leading me somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I trust. And I place such a big emphasis on trust. I trust that it's leading me to some outcome greater and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. So basically the whole book is just a series of doorways. Here's a doorway you can enter. Maybe who knows where it's going to lead you. Here's another doorway where you can enter. Psychedelics are one doorway. Therapy is a doorway. Antidepressants are a doorway. Because the thing about me doing ayahuasca for the first time, it wasn't just an isolated event of me doing ayahuasca. It was 2 years of therapy before that. It was 2 years of yoga, 6 years of meditation, stopping drinking, getting sober, stopping drugs, like doing all these things to work up to it. So I'm working on a guide right now that is going to condense all of those things into basically just like a list of like, I'm calling it's going to, well, I don't need to share that, but it's going to be like, what can you do today? What can you do this week? What can you do in a couple months, so like, what are the bigger things? So, and I think like, I talk a lot about mindsets, because I think they're so important. But I think the biggest one that will be the most helpful is a matter of acceptance and resistance. So like what a classic Kyle day when I was depressed would be, I'd wake up, I'd feel terrible, and then I would start, I call it the 7-layer shit cake in the book. So basically what it is it's where you start with a single emotion or feeling, like say it's depression, like I feel depressed. And then what happens is you start to stack other feelings and emotions on top of it. So you add shame, you're like, what's wrong with me that I feel depressed? And then now you have 2 emotions. And then you add anger, I fucking hate that I feel this way. Am I always going to feel this way? You know, and then you add anxiety, panic, like, oh my God, am I going to be in this forever? So then before you know it, instead of dealing with depression, you're dealing with 7 emotions, and then you're spun out, and then you have no ground to stand on, and you don't know what action to take because you're just confused and floundering. So I think the biggest practice is just acceptance and self-love, and saying, okay, I wake up, I feel depressed. What do I need? And I think I just wrote a blog post about 3 instant steps you can take to help with depression. And I think this ties into it. But the first is I would do a really quick radical state change, like a physical state change, something like jumping in an ice bath, sprinting, you know, doing some kind of quick workout that is going to get you out of your head and into your body. Because like a cold shower is a perfect example. Because when you're in a cold shower, you're not thinking about like, oh my
You're
God,
not.
my life is meaningless. I'm so sorry. I'm so sad. Like,
Good
wow,
luck
like,
staying with that thought if you're in a cold
exactly.
shower.
You're just like, I'm dying right now. Help me. Like, what is happening? You know? So it kind of snaps you out of it and wakes you up. And, you know, I think like, I don't know what the word is for this, but like, I want to just recognize that all of the things I'm talking about are harder when you're depressed. Like I still
Yes.
struggle with anxiety. And like I had a day last week where like it took me 8 hours to figure out like you just needed to go on a run, you know. But I and again, like that's like the vasanas, like those deep grooves that are just ingrained in us, you know, where it's just hard for me to know what to do. But so I'm gonna go back to this practice. So you do like a quick and physical state change, and then hopefully that'll just like wake you up a little bit, get you primed. And then the second thing is these 2 questions, and these questions come from ceremonies where a shaman shared this with me, because the biggest mistake people make with ceremonies is resisting it, you know. So I think, and this is life too, because ceremony is life. So it's like in the present moment, we always have 2 choices, acceptance or resistance, you know, and resistance usually leads to suffering. And resistance leads to our hands tied, because we're saying, I don't, the version of reality that my brain thinks should exist is a conflict with what's actually here. So then you're fighting with the moment, and then you're not able to respond accurately because you're just cringing and cringed up. I don't know if that's a word, but whatever. So the questions that I ask myself, you sit down and you say, what am I resisting? And that's such a big question, because it kind of disarms whatever's there. And like usually if there's anxiety, there's a tenderness and or like a sadness or a fear underneath. And like same with depression, like there's always something underneath. Like there's and then the next question is, what am I unwilling to feel? Which is a big question, you know. So then you ask yourself those questions, and you get a better gauge like what's actually going on. And going back to the alchemy, I believe that depression leads you to have a better relationship with yourself. And I'll speak more on this after this last step. But the third step is the head, heart, gut meditation. And this comes from a shaman that we were about to do a ceremony, and no one knew what their intentions were. Like everyone was like nervous and freaked out. Like, you know, that special kind of like terror.
Oh yeah, I know it. Yeah.
You walk into a room like 10 minutes before a ceremony, and like no one knows what to expect. And like there's the one guy who's like, I can't wait to ride the universe. And then there's other people just like staring at the floor like,
this was a mistake.
It's terrifying. Yeah, like what am how much do I pay for this?
Yeah.
So we did this meditation where, and this I use this all the time. And it's the head, heart, gut meditation. And essentially what you do is you ask the same question to your head, your heart, and your gut. And it's really interesting because I think depression is a monster of the mind. And David Foster Wallace talks about that, where he says most suicides are you're shooting the terrible master, you know, instead of the heart or the gut or whatever. So So you sit down, you close your eyes, and like, if usually the question is like, what do I need right now? And you ask your head, okay, head, what do I need right now? And like, you listen for answers. And then you
Yeah.
ask your heart, what do I need right now? And then you listen for answers and you think it, and you go down to your gut and you say, gut, what do I need right now? And then you listen for answers. And the thing about it is the answers are drastically different.
Yeah.
Like my head, like, and you can ask any question, like, what should I do today? What is my intention for today? Like, you can ask any question, and then my head is usually a slave driver, and like, you got to work, get things done, like, be, achieve, go. And then my heart is basically like, bro, you need space and presence, and my gut will say it's something even more profound. And it's interesting, is like, it's so Western just to think that like our minds are the only places we can listen to in our body.
Yeah.
It's like we have our heart access, we have our gut access. So it's interesting because like that is another, like, a baby form of alchemy of
Mhm.
waking up depressed, and instead of fighting it, you flow with it, and then you get to learn who you are more. You get to learn how to take care of yourself better, and you get to be your own champion in like a new, different way.
It's
Yeah, and
very
then like,
helpful what you just said.
yeah,
It's like I'm remembering, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking of my 11-year-old who is very resistant to a lot of things. And I'm thinking of myself, and it's very easily applicable what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go back, I do this often, but I'm gonna go back and listen to everything that we just said, because there's gold there, man. So that's people don't realize that. I mean, there's a connect, like, we live in a Western society that has, lost touch, particularly on the male side of things. Unfortunately, it's still, although we have a lot of people who are championing. Yeah, I think that's the right way to say that word. A more heart-centered consciousness that allows for vulnerability and affection, and and all the emotions in men. It's still a very traumatized world led by traumatized men.
yeah, it's a
So
disaster. Yeah.
we can use it. We could use a lot more of the feminine aspects of ourselves, I think. But
Mhm.
um, it's it does. I feel like it gets stuck in the head, but it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily live in the head for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And there are different reasons why we can feel. Some people, and they're learning more and more about this, about how much our microbiome is the first signal track for the emotions and the governance of our emotions in our heads. So sometimes, if this is off, that the reason why we're off kilter with our with the whole chemical imbalance, it begins here and has to go up through the heart and into the gut, and they're learning more and more about that. So it's just it's amazing how confused we've made ourselves in this Western
I mean,
society for
it
so
is so
many.
like there. I mean, it's a balance, because like there's a lot of it's a great time to be alive, but then there's so many things where um I this is such an generalization, but it's like men looking at nature and being like, I could do that better. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
What? No, it's fine. Just leave it."
Yeah.
Like, nature is way smarter than any of us are going to be. Like, it's just
My
fine.
God.
It's like we don't need to fix that. So.
And we don't ever, I mean, it's impossible to improve on nature. Nature has I don't
Mhm.
know. I mean, even if you just want to be literal, a couple 100 billion year head start, whatever, you know what I mean? Nature has been evolving as long as the existence of matter, which is
Yeah.
forever as far as we're
Mhm.
concerned. What are we going to improve on? We're here to be a part of it, and we are a part of it. But this notion that came with
Like.
the hijacking of Darwin's work and this whole domination of,
Mhm.
we have to dominate nature,
Exactly.
and it came with
Exactly.
religion. It's fucking, it's bullshit. It's propaganda.
Yeah.
It's justification to, in my opinion, that man men use to do horrible shit, both to man and to nature,
Mhm.
this notion that it's very upsetting. And it's going to change soon, or we won't be here, we
Mhm.
won't be here to see what happens if it doesn't. That's for sure,
Mhm.
and there's a part of me that is okay with that. There's a part of me that wants to see our mother well, wants to
Mhm.
see the earth live without the strain, and the constant bombardment that she gets from her children. I mean,
Mhm.
like, incredible mother, but there's only so much a mom can deal with.
Yeah.
So I hope that we get it together in time, and so that she doesn't have to get rid of us.
Yeah.
It's sad, that's where we're at right now. I think, it's like, we're not gonna, people think that we're gonna outlast the earth. The notion is absurd. This planet has been here a long time, and it will be here a lot longer after we are.
Mhm.
That's for sure. But so what you said was very, very helpful. And you know, you are making a great case for people, and I think that your book will help convince people that even though it's very hard to imagine for people in the throes of a battle with depression can be, the best thing that ever happened to them. And I think that you're making a case for that, right? With your book, and with what you're now teaching people from what you learned.
Yeah. And I'm riding on the wave of, I said this earlier, but I'll say it again, that like I never thought I would ever come out of it. Like I never thought there was hope. I never thought there would be light. And then just like that, everything was different. Everything was different. So my argument is I spent a decade making every mistake. I crashed my way through my 20s, you know, made a mess, and I still found light after that.
Mm.
So my message is like if I found light and healing from depression, anybody can. And like I understand the hurdles of like I don't have energy when I'm depressed. It's hard for me to think clearly, like all those other things. And like that's where you know, I have to make the conscious choice to just be like that, the unmoving force of optimism of just like, yes, like keep trying, keep trusting,
Mhm.
keep moving forward, and just keep doing the best you can, even if it's little steps. Because again, it's like you don't know how long your depression is going to last. It could be 2 days, 6 months, a
Two
couple years,
minutes,
and you don't know
2 hours.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, if you just start flipping, perspectives, flipping mindsets, working on all these other things, like everything is a step forward to something else.
Yeah.
Everything's a stepping stone. And again, the beauty is you have no idea where it's going to lead you.
That's very
So
true.
I never thought I was going to write a book. I'm tripping about that.
Dude, I bet
Like
you are. You're
I'm
like, whoa, my
tripping.
God, how the
I mean, it's funny as hell. I did an interview with my old manager Sarah, and she said the funniest question, where she was like, yeah, like you just raised like $23,000, like you came out of nowhere and you're like, hey, I just wrote this book, like I have no experience in that, no professionality in it, like nothing, and like you raised like $23,000 for it. And I was like, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard, but it's true,
Yeah.
and it just goes back to the like Ma has a plan for us that we don't
Mhm.
know. Again, it's just like Ma, ayahuasca, like the wisdom, the divinity. It's like there's a plan for us that is way better than I could ever think of. And like I don't know
Mhm.
about you, but like I know that it's hard for me to think positive sometimes. It's hard for me to be optimistic. And I just know that when I keep back and trust and just like focus on like what's here, focus on the path. And like this is another big theme with my book, is focusing on path instead of outcome. Because when
Mhm.
you focus on outcome, you suffer. And this can be about creativity, it can be about anything, but when you focus on
Yeah.
path and you're just like, when am I going to get out of this? I hate this. Like, is this going to end now? I would just want this to stop. Like that creates resistance. But if you
Mhm.
focus on path of like, what can I do in this very moment? What is in my power to change? What is the next right step?
Right.
And then you start focusing on path, and then like that's when things start unraveling. because you're letting life happen. You're in a state of being instead of like
Presence.
pushing and doing. Yeah, it's presence. It's non-doer versus doer,
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And you can't, it's much more difficult to step back from the emotion when you're not present, when you are being, v- washed away in it, so to speak.
mhm.
When you are very much embodying and being part of that reaction. And depression can be a reaction sometimes to things that you know I see it often. My wife was sad the other day, and she had forgot that it was the anniversary of her father's
Mm,
death. um and the body doesn't forget. Sometimes we can consciously forget something, but it's there, it's in us. And at some point, I'm sure that day she was aware, but then she had just kind of forgotten, was busy, but she but she had to check in and be patient with herself. And it's all an act of self-love. And I always tell people, and it's like we've been saying, it's harder to execute these plans when you're in the midst of it. But if you can start to remember just the smallest steps to take, that can help you. Those kind
and
of steps that
celebrate
you're
those
talking
steps.
about. Yeah,
Yeah,
that can be, you can't get anywhere unless you start with a step, and sometimes it's just one step after another. And then before you know it, you're out of it. You're in the clear. And what
yeah,
what I love is on the other side, then man, doesn't everything just feel so much better? Like it's the
yeah,
contrast, then, the colors, the flavors, the love that you feel, um, is so exaggerated on the other side,
yeah,
when you get through.
yeah. And I think like going back to your point about self-love, I wrote about this in the second chapter. I think the second chapter is called Dues of Depression. Um, like these are all the things to do for your depression, with your depression. But I think the first thing I mentioned is basically like self-compassion and self-love, because the path is so much easier when you're on your own team.
Hmm.
Like I remember during the pandemic, I'm gonna I'm gonna write a book about creativity probably, but I had some like early, when my band made our first record, like had some creative trauma, and my songwriting shut down. Like
Mm.
couldn't write songs anymore, and it took me like 7-8 years to get back on track. But during the pandemic, I was trying to write some songs, and I couldn't do it, and nothing was happening. And then um, I was being a meatball, and I got some mushrooms, and I thought I was microdosing,
Yeah.
but it turns out I was macrodosing. Like my friend was like, "Yeah, you're not supposed to feel the microdoses," and I was like, "Oh, I'm having like full blown journeys for like 4 hours." Like, whoops. But basically, I would just do like a free thing where 3-4 hours, and I just listen to the medicine. I was like, "Just take me wherever you want me to do.
Yeah.
Like, I trust you." And they put me at the piano one day, and I started writing a song, and I got to the chorus, and I was like, "This chorus isn't good enough. Like, you need this to be better." Like da da da. And the medicine was like, "Look at that. No wonder why you don't
Mm.
want to write songs, because it's fucking miserable."
Ah.
Like no wonder you don't want to do that, because you're beating yourself up with that. And I think that that's such a good analogy with depression too, because like go back to the example of me with the spiritual path. It's like I took steps to like go to spiritual places, and
Mm.
then when something didn't work out, my brain was like, "See, you're meaningless and alone. Like you don't matter. Like none of
Yeah.
this matters." And it's like your other point of presence. It's like that's where the presence comes in. You say, "Oh, look at me. I'm beating myself up again." And this goes back into thoughts, where it's like, what does the relationship have with your thoughts? Because something I didn't know was like a thought came in, and I was like, oh, it's a capital T truth.
Hmm.
If a thought tells me to kill myself, I should probably kill myself. So again, it's like it's this ecosystem of depression, where it's all these things mixed together of like belief
Hmm.
systems, thoughts, perspectives, daily actions, habits, like all these things, and you just kind of like work on them all together, and then they slowly start affecting each other. It's just like yoga. It's like yoga, where it's like if you want to do a headstand or handstand, it's like all the other poses help
Yeah.
you to do that. It's like you don't think when you're in Warrior 2, you're like, oh, I'm getting better at a headstand, but like something magical happens when like you just show up every day for 2 weeks. And like the first week, you're like, you see another person get up so gracefully in their headstand. You're like, I'll never be able to do that.
Right.
And then like the first week, like you kind of get your toes above, and then like you fall over and you keep getting up, And then 4 weeks in, like you do your headstand, and you're like, I don't know how that happened, but I guess like, the push-ups helped, like the
Right.
ab stuff helped, like all these things helped and served and embedded into me doing the headstand.
Yes.
And I think like the last point I'll make with this is with creativity and depression, I think like if you look at how a baby learns how to walk, they're just getting up, they're falling down, they're getting up, they're falling down, they're
Yep.
getting up, they're falling down.
Yep.
If a baby had the self-talk that human adults have, they would fall the first time and they're like,
They
what's
would-
wrong with me that I can't walk? Tommy can walk over there. Like
Yep.
I haven't gotten the first time, I haven't gotten the second time, maybe I'll never walk, and it's like Zen mind, beginner's mind, it's like
Yeah.
babies just do stuff, they they're just that clear presence. And we get so trapped in the stories and
We
like
do.
the trauma and like the belief and all that stuff. So
That's
yeah.
a great analogy too. Babies are blessed with the ability to forget that they just fell, especially if it didn't hurt too bad.
Mhm.
But there's something to be learned from that mindset, yeah. And I have children, so trying to instill these things into them so that they don't have to learn the hard way, and not the hard way, but the longer way, right?
Yeah.
The more time I spend with them, the more I'm convinced that I had to go through everything I had to and get to where I am so that I could give it to them, and I find myself giving it to as many people as I can, because people need it right now. A lot of people listening to this podcast are listening because they're struggling, and hopefully they have a little clearer of a roadmap, because it's like any other situation. When you're hanging from a rope, you're not thinking about whether you left a toaster on or not. You know what I'm saying? You're
Mhm.
just trying to hang
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
So, I always think that the more it was not one thing that got you into this battle, right? And it's not going to be one thing necessarily that even in your case that wins the war, right? You had taken steps and were taking steps before you got to the plant ceremony. That's the same experience I had. I had started meditating. I had started to practice, and I was doing all these things to try to heal, and open my heart and get rid of the physical and like these habits that I had come into, that I knew were not serving me anymore, and were part of the reason I was filled with so much self-loathing. And I ended up, I was ready to fly to Peru. I ended up finding a temple a lot closer to where I was living at the time. It just happened, right? Just literally somebody was like, "Oh yeah, you don't gotta." I was like, "No, for real, it's like a legitimate place." And he was like, "It might as well be in Peru. They're all right from Peru." I was like, "Oh, tell me about it, dude." It's like 2 hours from my place.
Amazing.
It's like things just start finding you, just like the $23,000 you found. It's when you start to take steps, the universe takes notice, and the
Yeah.
universe wants you to find your path. And it's gonna, you're gonna see the breadcrumbs are gonna get bigger. The signs are gonna get larger,
Mhm.
and they're gonna be easier to follow. But it starts with that
Yeah.
single step, just
That's
one
literally
step at a time.
in my book. Yeah. That's in
Yeah,
my book. It's so good.
it's great. So and tell everyone where your book's available.
It's on Amazon right now.
It's on Amazon, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll include a link to that in the video
Yeah,
description.
that'd be amazing. Here it is. It's right here. I got it. Yeah,
But
it's on Amazon right now. And then I'm excited about this actually. I'm gonna put out the audiobook in
nice.
a month or two.
Awesome.
I'm doing this really cool thing where I finished a record, like, so in the book I talk about making a record while depressed. I wanted to make a record here at home. So bought a bunch of gear, pitted out with depression, just bottomed out, like couldn't. I'd start to program a drum beat and it would just, 10 seconds in, I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then it's like, bro, this isn't cool. Go kill yourself. Like, just,
Yeah.
and I was like, it's hard to make a record when you're struggling with that. But I finished it, and came out really good, and then didn't know what to do with it, and it just sat there. And then I was talking to a buddy last week, and he's like, have you put any music with the audiobook? And I was like, what? People do that?
Yeah.
So it's crazy thing is that there's going to be a song per chapter at the end, and then the like the divine timing of all this stuff is like there's 11 songs, there's 11 chapters, and every song corresponds with like the chapter material. And like I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
consciously think that out, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's gonna
that'll
be
be
so
out.
cool, man.
Yeah.
You're gonna record
Yeah.
that nice.
Yeah, it's me.
That's very cool.
Fellas.
So let's go far out, my friend. I can't let you leave here without taking you out into the solar system, into the universe,
Yeah.
through the galaxy.
Here.
So tell me, what is your not understanding, but do you have any kind of experience? Have you ever seen a UFO? Have you ever been taken on a ship? Have you ever had dreams, abductions? Tell me what your experience is. And if you don't have any, that's cool too.
No, I can tell you. No, I've no UFOs or aliens, but I've seen light beings. I've seen guardians on medicine and off medicine. I've had a dead Indian come to me before I was going to sleep and communicate a message to me. And all this stuff, like if you would have told Kyle 5 years ago this stuff would happen, he would have called you crazy as hell. So I think that I sure have a bunch of more stories.
Do you know what tribe the Native American?
Shumash.
Was it a
that story's in
spirit?
the book.
Oh, cool,
This is
cool,
a
man.
crazy story, actually. Like, do you want me to tell it?
I mean, people who are, I mean, yeah, can you tell it?
Yeah. So I have all these Russian witch friends in LA, shamans, and
Yeah.
they're like the baddest bitches I've ever met. Just like so cool, so powerful. And I was dating this woman who was the energy healer at the time, who was friends with them. And my parents' house is in Santa Barbara, and it was where I spent like the most time depressed, like just brutal. So we were talking to my friend and trying to get her to do an energy clearing here, because like that idea came up, and then like we forgot about it. So then like it was the day before Thanksgiving. I came up here, was not on my spiritual stuff at all, like was playing Elden Ring, like ate a bunch of meat and like burgers and like watching weird porn, and then like was just like not on like the presence thing at all. And then I go to sleep, and clear as a fucking bell, like I see this like bloody mangled face,
oh boy,
of an Indian. And I wasn't like, miraculously I wasn't scared, because another friend of mine has this happen to her all the time, and she says that whenever that happens, they're usually there to communicate a message, and they're not there trying to like attack you or hurt you. So at first I did get startled, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening, and then like the downloads started coming where he's like, oh, he's mad. And then I'm like, oh, he's on stolen land. Or no, he's not on stolen land, like I'm on stolen land. This whole city is on stolen land.
Right.
There's blood everywhere, and like he has this message that he wants me to get out to him, or to get out to people, So then the craziest part was I go to Thanksgiving the next day, and like all the witches are there, and I see my friend, and she's like, how was your night? And it was fun. Sorry. I went to sleep. Everything was fine. And I woke up the next day, and I was like, what the hell just happened? Like, that was insane, So then I go see my friend, and I tell her, and she's like, maybe we should do the clearing this week, So this, and like, this was, you want to talk about like priorities changing, it was a Friday. My girlfriend at the time came up with me. We got in like a weird mood because the energy, and then like the Smashing Pumpkins were playing in town. So I'm like talking to the guitar to Jeff, and he invites me to the show, and I was like, bro, I would love to come to the show, but like we're about to do a seance at my house right now.
Yeah.
and then like that was a moment where I was like, wow, like you're really trading in the rock star life for this like spiritual stuff, So
I would love to come to.
yeah, I was like, bro, I don't know how long the seance is gonna take, but like, if you're, I was like, I would love to see the set, but like, I think I should probably take care of this because it seems
Yeah.
pretty intense, and like that was funny as hell. So then, my friend comes in and I didn't tell her anything. I don't think I told her about like what the guy looked like,
Hmm.
the face. I didn't tell her. I don't even know if I told her the race. Like, I don't remember any of that, but she walked into the hallway. There's a little hallway where the bathroom is and connects like this room and the bedroom, and she stops and she's like, somebody was murdered here. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
and she's like, and his son was murdered here. And I'm like, what did he look like? And she's like, long hair, dark skin. And I was like, was he an Indian? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, what the hell?
Oh,
So
man.
we did this whole ceremony where we sat and there was roses and water and we sang and like basically like escorted the spirit out.
Hmm.
And it was really beautiful. And I told my parents, I was like, can you guys just leave for like 6 hours? Like, I got to do some stuff here.
Yeah.
So the crazy thing was we took my dad to dinner the next day, and I was like, I was like bringing it up to him. I was like, hey, so like, here's what happened last night. Like, there was a spirit trapped in the
Yeah.
house, and we had to like get it out and put it back into nature. And my dad's like, I'm thinking he's gonna be like, this is ridiculous,
Yeah.
son. But he's like, was he an Indian with long
What?
hair? And I was like, what? I was like, what? And he's like, bro, I've been seeing this guy for 20
Oh
years. He's
my
been scaring the
God.
shit out of me.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. And so like he was seeing him in like the mirror outside, like in the
Holy
hallways. And I
shit.
was like, why didn't you say anything, Dad? And he's like, I don't know.
I mean, oh my God, that's crazy.
So it was like the funniest thing ever, where it's just like, it's like this kind of stuff where I was like, well, that was a good weekend,
Holy
but
memorable weekend, that
yeah.
man. That is,
So, but I mean, yeah, I'm sure aliens are real. I'm sure there's so much stuff behind. Like, I've had so many bonkers experience with medicine
yeah.
of stuff where I'm like, oh, that wasn't on my radar. Like fairies,
Yeah.
elves, really?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things. Like the light beings thing is really cool. Like the ancestral stuff. Like, so I don't know.
That's amazing though. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like a lot of that is very much part of this
it's all
planet, and
real. Yeah.
and and it still exists. It's, when you understand that time is not, that there's only this moment, but that's all there ever has been, and everything that
Yeah.
has existed still exists. It's just
Yeah.
not in this dimension, right?
Hmm.
And that's when people start to, come into a higher perception and a higher vibration. They start to perceive things that they couldn't before, and they don't always tell people because they're not quite sure whether they actually perceive them or not. But when you have conversations with people, they're like, yeah, well, I was outside and I saw this gnome looking, and like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's like, but you didn't get freaked out. And it's amazing that you saw it, because it speaks to your level of perception. Society would have you think that you're seeing things, and you are, in the most profound way. You are seeing things, you know what I mean? It
Hmm.
doesn't mean you're crazy. It
No.
just means that you ever like listen to a song that you've heard 1,000 times, but you're in like a great mood, and all of a sudden you
Yeah.
hear something in the song you never heard before. You're like, I never heard that part before. I never
Hmm.
heard that little the piano in the background there. You're just like, what happened? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like what happened was you've expanded your perception, and you're taking in more information. That's what we're designed to do. So
Yeah.
that's an amazing story, dude. I can't believe your dad. Oh my
It's
God, that's
ridiculous.
great. What, but
Yeah,
that,
but
dude, talk about validation for what happened. You know what I mean? What you were doing. I
oh,
mean,
yeah.
that's incredible. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a nuts weekend.
So cool, man. Listen, I want to give you an opportunity and you're doing this with your life right now, but I guess I want to ask you for a very, very abridged version of it for my listeners who have stuck with us this long. I always love to offer people, something that they can walk away with, and if it resonates enough with them, make part of, the operating system that they have. It could be like a mantra, it could be a saying, it could be just something that you would like to share with people to help them, kind of get wired, or rewired in a way that allows for a greater expression of joy for themselves in this life. And I would love for you to close this out with some of that wisdom you've come into.
Mm. Mm. Oh, there's a lot coming right now. I'm trying to be succinct with it. I think it's just trust. I think it's trust that you came on this planet for a reason. Trust that there's a purpose and plan for your life. And trust that you're being guided. And I mean guided at all times. Like whether it's trying to find a parking spot, whether it's trying to figure out if you should take this job. And I think offering your life to a force that's greater than you in service. And again, just trusting someone's writing the story upstairs and it's a better story than I ever could have written. And this life is so magical and so mystical that if I just start to lean into that, really beautiful things are going to happen.
It's perfect, man.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. And so right on. There's so much that comes with trust. And sometimes we need to remind ourselves. I need to remind myself, it's
all the
like,
time.
and I know it and I've experienced it. And I still always, I got to remind myself that this is working out for the best for me.
Yeah.
And when it goes from a belief to truly knowing, then it becomes part of who you are, as you're walking around, and it starts to show up, with what you see in your life, which is always amazing. And that's when these mystical, magical, wonderful synchronicities start to happen more often, but you got to take the risk. Sometimes it feels like a risk, but it can be scary,
Yeah.
but I found that the more I can leave it up and not decide, the more ways I get surprised, right? And there's trust right there,
Yeah.
but
And I think it's really important what you just said too. And I also want to emphasize that trust is a practice. It's the same as weightlifting. It's the same as learning how to play guitar. Everything we talked about in this conversation is the same way. And it's like the first time you decide to trust something and you have 10 years of not trusting anything, it can be a little bumpy and awkward. So again, it's just like, I think this is another really important nugget too, is that like we can change, Dispenza talks about this a lot, but it's like we can change our thoughts, we can change our beliefs, and we can change our way of being. It just takes practice. And it's just weaving. It's weaving. It's like when you first, I wish I had a better analogy with this, but it's like when you first start doing it, it's really bumpy, the ups and downs are low, and then it starts to smooth out. Like 6 months of trust, you're here, and then a year of trust, then you're in that, and it's just practice. So everything's just a practice. Most things are just conditioning. Yeah.
Yep. No, you said it, step by step, day by day. And
Yeah.
it took you, most of your life to get to that place that you no longer want to be at. So, it can take a little while, and a little, but if you're persistent and consistent,
Yeah. And trust that you're
it'll
always
change. Yeah.
Trust that you're always on time. Like you're never late. You're always on time.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been real. I am so glad that our mutual acquaintance and friend Nick
I love Nick.
introduced us, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of your book. And it's been awesome, Kyle. I really love hearing your journey, and I'm so
Thank you.
glad we did this
I
podcast together.
appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Kyle. So you take
Yeah.
care, man. I'll let you know when this is going to come out and all that.
Okay.
And everyone who's interested, you'll find all the links to Kyle's website and his book in the video description. And thank you again, Kyle. Appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah. Thank you.
You
Yeah.
take care, man. Have a great weekend.
All right. You too.
Thank you.